Hello. Oh, no. It's like I had to turn off the audio on my computer so we don't have.
Well, sign in.
Yes.
Yes.
If you could promote Arturo and Susan. Great. All right.
It's a full house.
Yeah.
It's so there you go.
And
You want a copy of the agenda, Charlie? Speak it loud. Ah, sorry.
again.
Everybody has a notice, right?
Great. Welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Manhattan Community Board 2 Outdoor Dining Working Group. It is 6:33. We do have a quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I know we still have people coming into the Zoom room, so we'll just let them continue while we get started with our early remarks. I am Valerie Della Rosa. I am the chair of the Outdoor Dining Working Group. Joining me here in the room this evening, I'll just quickly go around and introduce. We have Carter Booth, who's the former chair, and on SLA, we have Stella Fitzgerald, who is on land use and traffic and is a board member. We have Brian Pape, who is on landmarks, street activities, and I'm missing a third one. This one.
So,
Oh, SLA. See, SLA. Yes.
Assistant Secretary too.
And then we have Shirley Secunda, our traffic and transportation chair. So with that, I'm going to go to the agenda. So quickly, wanted to get a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second, and then I don't have this on here, which was approval of the May meeting minutes. It was what was sent out with this. So just if I can get just a motion to approve those. Great. In a second. Thanks. Great. So with those two items cleared, we are going to, just so I let everyone know kind of how we're going to run today. As you can see, this is the agenda. We had our public hearing on West 10 West LLC, DBA West 10 West, 242 West 10th Street, for Sidewalk at our May 22nd meeting. We also had the applicant appear at that meeting to answer any of our questions. And then we also heard testimony from the public, as well as, what else did there's something else I was gonna add. We also heard their roadway application and voted on their roadway application, which was sent to DOT, which was voted on at full board and passed and sent to DOT today. So what we will do so we're not taking any more public testimony on West 10 West LLC. If there is on the calendar, the CB2 calendar, there is a link to a feedback form. You can, if there's any additional comments anyone from the public wants to give on that specific topic, that's the place to do it now. The committee is going to continue the discussion, which includes reviewing the resolution that we're going to propose to bring to the June full board meeting, as well as, yeah, so I think that's all for the sidewalk. So we'll finish that. Then we're going to move on to discuss a resolution that we would like to send to the executive committee on the Dining Out NYC application process. And that is mostly, so that will just be voted on at exec. But we will discuss that next. We can take any public testimony on that, so I can we'll have our discussion, and then we'll ask if there's any public testimony on that business item. And then for new business, this is a placeholder that we'll have in our meeting moving forward as a discussion of any Dining Out NYC applications that are referred. As long as our meetings are on Mondays, we do have the possibility of receiving a DOT Dining Out NYC application. They send them out citywide to community boards on Mondays. So that's also a piece of information. So with that, I'm going to quickly,
I'd like to add something to
Yeah.
this too,
okay.
and it's really sidewalk grading. And whether that applies as 8-foot clearance, because we've now come up, well, I'll talk about it then.
Okay, great. And yeah, so to kind of kick off our discussion on West 10 West, since this applicant had an application before us on roadway that we've now sent in the form back to DOT. I just wanted to close the loop on some things that I've learned. Well, maybe it's more of the executive committee, but the DOT public hearing for West 10 West, the roadway cafe, is going to be on Thursday, June 20th at 10 a.m. and it's a Zoom link. I will be sending that information to the board office, and it'll go into our newsletter so that if people want to speak at the DOT public hearing, as you know, DOT, all roadway cafes have a DOT public hearing. So as I mentioned, all applications are referred on Mondays. They schedule the public hearing for roadway cafes. When I say they, I mean DOT, on the 31st day after that 30-day deadline, comment deadline that community boards have. So just kind of some information to know. So just so everyone knows that's listening, there are people have 3 minutes to testify at a DOT public hearing on hello.
No, I said,
Right, thank you. Welcome. And please sign in. Yes, right here.
Use my pen.
And yeah, so with that, let's go to West.
What?
That's my reservation.
Okay, that's fine. If you just want to take a seat back here.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so let's talk about the sidewalk application. I sent through to and I can just take off the screen share. The issues that were identified, they were in the May meeting report, but I've drafted a resolution. West 10 West LLC, they've come to us for 2 tables and 4 chairs in a sidewalk cafe. I've included a lot of the information that it's a narrow residential street, it's a neighborhood corridor street, so it requires an 8-foot sidewalk clearance. So I've included, they're proposing a sidewalk cafe that's 8.2 feet long by 3 feet wide. If anyone wants to follow along, the application is on the CB2 website that has the site plan that we're referencing here. And let me share my screen to this. So one of the issues that we found is that while they do have an 8-foot clearance as demonstrated in their site plan, because of the tree bed, which they did not include the measurement of on their form, so it is not a complete and accurate form. We learned that, the 8-foot clearance doesn't, let me just share my screen because it doesn't really make sense to keep talking through it without the visual on it.
Very hard for me. Can I at least move my chair over there because it's very hard to hear the hearing.
Sure. But we're not taking any public testimony at this time. Okay. Okay. So share this one, 'cause it's. Okay, so. Great, so on here. So initially, we talked about this photo last time that Stella had taken the measurement. And so what we're talking about is that tree pit on the left side of your screen that has seating that the applicant did indicate that they would be happy to remove the seating around the tree if asked to do so. So we have asked them to do that. We asked them to do that in the roadway cafe feedback form that we gave. And so as you can see here, the 3.6 is what Stella has measured, which is about they said 3.5 and, it's about approximate. But that turn radius, so the 8-foot clear path, and we kind of have this in a couple of different images. So, Brian, thank you, Brian, for coming to, measure. So here I kind of outline, this is exactly kind of what Stella had. And at this angle, we had 5 feet, and then the 3.5 feet.
Can I just put something in context?
Yes.
So for everybody here, when this was presented last month, there were missing measurements.
Yes.
And as a result of the missing measurements, the space for the sidewalk cafe, we realized was incorrect. And we essentially took the extra time we had and had a few board members went out and measured the space, taking into account all of the required clearances. And so what we're hearing now on this photo
Thank you.
is the presentation of the discrepancy.
Yes, and so also, thank you for that. So also, the sidewalk cafe ends at this white line naturally, and so that's a natural border. So that's just to kind of give context. The angle's a little off because of the photo, but that's my. And so you see, they do meet the 8-foot clear path in the one on the left there. But then once you get towards that tree bed, it turns into 5 feet. And so the tree bed was not measured, it's just as a block on there, and it's not clear if that's the size of it without the seating or with the seating, it's just not clear. And then it also wasn't on the form with the numerical measurement, it was just kind of left off. So we've asked, so again, this was not a complete and accurate application that was referred to us.
So if I may add.
Yes,
It's our understanding of the DOT rules.
yes,
That the clear path needs to be a consistent clear path. And that's why narrowing it from 8 feet to 5 feet or less, if you include the obstacle of the sidewalk cafe seating, that is a violation of what the DOT rules are.
correct. As I mentioned, this is a neighborhood corridor street, West 10th, this block of West 10th. So it requires an 8-foot clear path in the rules. And so it's not an 8-foot clear path in some places. You should be able to span the 8-foot clear path you should be able to turn it. Yeah, continuous. Yeah. So if you had like a stick that was 8 feet, it should be able to clear the entire thing, I guess. So that's the second exhibit. And again, this is to communicate here at this meeting what we learned. And then this is, we drew out just with light sidewalk chalk, the proposed outline, and then our recommendation. And there was something in there, Brian, if we could talk about the 18 inches, because I couldn't find that, and I found it as a utility. So if we could address that.
Oh, that's right. I did go back and look
Okay,
for these various clearance requirements.
right,
You have to be a certain distance from like that, the pipe, that fuel pipe that sticks up. And certain entrances can be blocked.
And that's where the 18 inches is then. for
I,
the fuel.
I believe it would have been. I believe so.
Right,
But as far as the entrance was on it's
over,
kind of an upper part.
This?
There's two entrances next to one another. And we weren't sure if in fact the mandate was to stay a certain distance from the door as well. But I did not find that. So we're back to the 8-foot clear is the governing measurement.
yes.
And it takes care of being clear of the doorway very easily.
But then do we have for this thing, is it 1 foot 6 inches? So it's just, maybe that's 18 inches on the other side.
Yeah.
And I can look it up in the 1 foot 6 inches.
Yeah, there are clearances like that for certain utilities, certainly for a Siamese fire department connection.
What do we, that's just a,
This is a fuel, let's say it's a,
I'm just gonna look it up. So
we're gonna need to look that up too. See what I've got.
vent infrastructure, utility, vent poles, ventilator grates, subway grates. For Shirley's new business item, subway grates is a 1 foot 6 inch clearance.
Prominent. Okay, I think that almost is answering one.
Okay,
So it says here for remaining utility coverings. And this is at the end of the utility clearances section. It simply says that they may be located within a sidewalk cafe,
okay,
provided they do not prevent visual location of access to utility covering.
okay.
I seem to remember from that sketch that they give. Do you have that here? Of all the different dimensions and clearances required, that DOT gives the sketch.
Right.
And I thought it was really clear about the entrance spot, that you had to, that 18 feet, that's what you recall, but you really had to clear that entrance. I mean, that's a.
So it's the primary building entrance is 5 feet.
But I don't think that there is a requirement for,
But the establishment, yeah, because
it's not a requirement for clearance from a retail.
yeah,
If
Which
it's
is-
your business.
yeah.
I remember last time talking about the 5 feet clearance from the residential entrance to the west.
Right, which,
And I went out and measured this morning and I didn't think it was going to work out.
do you know what the measurement was?
Yeah, I took photos. I realized an hour ago I should have done them in a slightly
No,
different
it's okay.
way, but but if we're doing the 8 feet, and then the 3.5 feet, this is 5 feet from the residential entrance here,
Oh.
and then you end up with only about 12 inches of space for the sidewalk cafe.
Oh, wow. Oh, because the residential entrance on the right,
Yeah.
because that's the other, those were the two other things missing in section 22 was the distance from the residential on the, I think I got feedback from Donna to talk about the direction. So the one to the east of the establishment, which is the first one you showed, and then the one to the west of the establishment. So they also did not include those measurements on the application, making it not complete and accurate.
This is to the west. I
Right.
don't know what the number is. 240, I guess, or 244.
So,
The way that I measured it,
4 probably. Yeah,
or is that how
this
it
is
works?
going that way. Yeah.
so. I'm like, if you want to sign into the Zoom, you can definitely share your screen. If,
I can put it in the Google Drive. What would you prefer?
either one. it's easy to share. I mean, eventually. They should go in there, so. Stop the share. Anyway, so, okay, so. So based on what you've shown, yeah, if you could share those, or you could share your screen and just show them on screen, because that would, well, probably you showing them on your screen would be fastest. Because then you can speak to them.
I'm not.
She's logging in. But while Stella pulls those up, so, I mean, based on what this information, and we'll show it on the screen in just a second. Based on the drawing they've shown us, it doesn't sound like a sidewalk at even one table, because initially the proposed recommendation I had put together was based on the feedback last time, and based on the measurements that Brian and I did and have shown, it seemed like they could only really fit one table and 2 chairs. But now with this, the photographs and measurements that Stella has done of the primary building entrances, which I had not factored in here, it seems to indicate as though 12 inches, because of those primary building entrances, because it's a primary residential entrance on the east, right? It is,
Or
right?
on the
Okay.
west, sorry, on the west.
But not on the, so then you don't need 5 feet
It's
on the east, right?
the west meaning towards Hudson.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Sidewalk Cafe, sorry, I'm,
No, it's
I don't
okay.
have the,
I know. Oh, why do we
I
have
don't
the
have the
link?
I just tried to.
Can you register? Okay, thanks. So you're only, so the 12 inches is not including a 5-foot clearance on the east. It's just a 5-foot clearance on the west.
Right, so.
Oh, but you're then factoring in the 8-foot clear path, reducing that side, right? So that it meets the 8-foot clear path. Yes, yes. Now I get it.
Stella, can I take a peep?
She's gonna share her screen in just a second. Turn off the, sorry. Just turn off. Yeah, disconnect from the computer audio, leave computer audio, yeah. Perfect. No, it's okay.
Okay,
Thank you for being so quick on your feet. I really appreciate it. But I think this is the missing part of the story on this one, and then we can wrap up our discussion.
no, it's
Maybe just open it, it's all on a PDF, right?
yeah,
Yeah, just open up the PDF, and it'll be as big as they can be in the.
not showing. Sorry,
No, it's okay.
I'm gonna stop the share. Share that.
You have it pulled up in that? We'll just give you a minute. No, don't worry. I'm gonna see if I can find the site plan, because Shirley was referencing that, and I have it saved in this deck.
All right.
All right. Thank
Okay,
you.
so this is, the entrance that I'm talking about. This is to the west of
Right,
the Sidewalk Cafe. So to the east of this photo is the main entrance for the restaurant.
right. And then the black is the restaurant.
Right.
Right, okay.
And so they were proposing that the Sidewalk Cafe would be on top of this cellar grate.
Right, and that it would end at the natural white line,
Right.
right? Okay. And so what you're saying is,
So this here is measuring 5 feet from the door of the entrance, or the edge of the door frame. I don't know exactly how we want to measure that. or how it should be
It's probably from the
measured.
the
rear
sill of the door
Okay,
to the right.
okay, so, I mean, it's hard to estimate exactly what that
Oh,
is. Let's say that's like 7 inches,
sure,
7 inches. Okay, so imagine this is shifted over then. So we have. I
so
also
19
measured-
inches. So now there's 19 inches for a sidewalk cafe?
I guess so, because what I ended up measuring, see, does this show? Okay. So we have the 8 feet, and I should have brought like 3 tape measures, was my bad. But
Just literally
We know for
text
the
me. I
future.
have 3, like
we know
literally
it's
text.
bring 3 tape.
Yeah.
So we have 8 feet from the tree pit bench here.
Mhm.
We have the 3.5 feet out. Assuming that, the residential entryway is not an issue at all, this line is where their sidewalk cafe would be able to start, right?
Right,
Okay,
because of the 8-foot clearance.
because
Right,
this line is the 3.5 feet. That they are proposing that it's out from the edge of the.
whereas, remember when I showed the outline, well, the outline, it would go up to the edge, yeah, minus the 18 inches we took off.
So
before.
here.
Well, no, we don't take off 18 inches on that second, so right there, literally, yeah, so that's where the 5 feet clearance, that's where they weren't meeting the 8 feet.
Right.
Was
So
on
we
that
would-
diagonal, and
They
so
would
you're
have to
showing,
Start the.
Doesn't make
sidewalk
sense
cafe.
if they remove that tree seating.
Hard to know what's under.
it's hard to know, because
Mhm.
remember, the tree pits are not measured from the tree anymore as they were in the old sidewalk cafe program, that clearance used to be measured from the tree trunk. Now it's
Oh.
measured from the edge, so that's a change. Huh?
I only-
No, I know that,
Well, and in this case, from what you can see at the top of the bench or where it clears the tree, the roots and the soil come up 8 to 10 inches above the sidewalk around the tree. So this does not look like they could get down to sidewalk level, which I know there is a variance if
Mhm.
you have a paved
I don't think.
around the tree.
I don't think there is.
It's not clear. Well, anyway, I don't think it's possible. Otherwise you kill the tree with cutting the roots.
the variance is on global and is, the variance is only for global corridors and regional corridors.
Okay. Yeah, so here's the 8-foot clearance clearly says edge of tree bed.
Yep.
8 foot.
Yeah,
And so Brian, what you're saying is based on when you looked in, the tree pit edge goes to the corner of the seating.
Pretty close. Very
So
close.
there's
Yeah.
not much to be gained there. Yeah,
Okay, so measuring from here is approximately correct.
yeah,
probably. Okay,
about. I mean, you're not,
Yeah.
there, maybe they'll gain an inch, maybe, but I don't really foresee that.
okay.
So,
So then assuming that this line is where they could start their sidewalk cafe, that has to be. Let me say this another way. This is where they could start.
Mhm, mhm.
Going this way, where they could end would have to be 5 feet away from.
right.
let's
And
say,
Laura Tenenbaum had put in there about covering the cellar door as long as it's not a means of egress, and we did confirm that. Yeah, we confirmed that it was not a means of egress with the applicant at the May 22nd meeting. That's a good
Anyway.
point.
Stella showing us here is that the tape measure is extended to a 5-foot length.
Mhm.
So, okay.
So I did it from the wrong point. Here, shift this
Right, but-
over by about 6 or 7 inches.
Right.
And then create a new line. Assuming what I did, it would leave us with 12 inches approximately, maybe, I guess a little more. And that would be the
Yeah.
space for their table and
Yeah,
chairs.
right.
So,
Yeah, even if you give a
So even if
few
it's
inches.
not 15 inches and you switched the seating to perpendicular, the 3 feet is not enough space for the depth of, meaning what we're trying to establish here is the box within which the sidewalk cafe can exist.
Right,
Before even discussing tables and chairs. And with the box that's created through the measurements, does not seem big enough for any type of configuration.
we go to about here, I guess.
They
Because
said it was
go with
all else.
box here. To the edge of this
So-
line.
I'm gonna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to do that.
Okay, so our conclusion is basically that the elements. Measurements from required elements were omitted from the original plan. When they're actually put in, it results in a condition. Where it does not appear that there can be
That it's possible.
sidewalk cafe.
And I really thought, I really thought
So-
until we, again, because we didn't have that primary, and that was the feedback, was that we didn't have that information. So I'm trying to,
So my question is, would you guys be willing to volunteer to go back? Just to have a photograph with
With
the measurements of from all, even giving little leeway, if it's a few inches on the tree pit. Right up to the door frame to just demonstrate visually that there's not enough room.
I would go back.
Yeah, until we find out, I mean, until we have a better feedback from DOT, I think the visual evidence is what's important to
It is.
provide. Because, I mean, this isn't subjective, this is fairly,
I'm just gonna.
you read it or you don't, right? And
Or whatever.
That's, well, that, and again, that's the whole reason why because we do have the 40 days on this one, and it's the whole reason why we decided to lay this one over. So that because we are trying to make this work.
And again, I will say it's disappointing that it's not clear for the applicants. Because in this particular case, the applicant has made 2 applications, submitted the fees. And, written the checks to the city, and it appears that in both cases. They've not been given enough information that they're able to come to the conclusion that this probably doesn't fit. And that's disappointing to me, because I think that that's very unfair to the business operators. And,
So are you saying that there is not an requirement to provide? Because I thought we had decided that the applicant there were questions, the applicant had.
that may be, the point is, that
And
doesn't
then,
seem that there is clarity. That is given during the application process. To just say, look, you have to meet these minimum requirements. I have noticed, not just from our board, but other community boards. People only look at the required elements literally straight out from their storefronts. Without being clear that there are clearance requirements that extend beyond their storefront. And that, in this case, that seems to be the problem, is that the elements that were beyond the borders of their storefront were not taken into account.
And that's
in
not
this
enumerated in the instructions.
It may be, but it's not explicit. And it's a disservice in the end, if there's review, or even frankly, I would suspect if you provided incorrect information, how would you correct this if the license were issued incorrectly? So,
Is there anything we should be saying in the resolution? I don't know.
we did in our first
Yeah.
resolution with respect to the roadway, but I mean, this is the complicated aspect where the city, some time ago passed the legislation that does not require a licensed architect to draw the plans. And now, if you, without really following everything to the letter of the law, without somebody who is an expert in this area, I think you run into these challenges.
Yeah, because I was
Dynamic.
reminded
Yeah.
with this upcoming,
Oh, yeah.
that here is a professional.
Yeah.
And this is the way it used to be, from what my memory is, the Sidewalk Cafe. We've been to the Department of Consumer
I mean-
Affairs, and I was gonna bring this up, you just did.
Yeah.
But why aren't they required to? That was.
City council passed this legislation.
It's very kind of sloppily done.
City council passed this legislation, one of the very first pieces of legislation with respect to outdoor dining. They felt that the costs of retaining an architect and having a professionally designed plan was too expensive in order to make the program accessible to restaurants, in particular in the outer boroughs where the revenue generation from the businesses is not high. And if you look at the fees associated with coming up with the plans that you just showed for another establishment, I think they're fairly substantial. So it's a balance point, but
No,
This guy pays his application fee, and then he doesn't qualify.
well,
So
and
consequently, isn't it better to have? I mean, obviously, maybe to make the law, but it just seems like.
that's challenge number one.
What?
Challenge number two is the DOT reviewed this.
no. No. This is an application gets sent in, it is the intake period. That is what that period is officially called. So it's the intake period and it's checking that they have the documents.
They don't review them.
There is some back and forth. The actual deep dive review does not happen until after the community board comment and or review period, depending if it's roadway or sidewalk. Then if there's a DOT public hearing, again, there is always for roadway, there might be one for sidewalk or not, depending if it's approved with modifications or denied by the community board. Then DOT does their review, taking in all of that. So that's what I've learned. And with respect to the 15-foot emergency lane, they should be flagging that they've noticed it's not met in places that has not happened for us yet, but that's the ideal.
Can you repeat that?
The 15-foot emergency lane, DOT is supposed to flag it. Hey, we noticed that there's not a 15-foot emergency lane here. Right, during the intake period. However, that was not the case with the first roadway application we had. But that waiver, that was our big question with the roadway application for West 10 West. And so that waiver is not going to be decided until the review period. And again, it depends on their back and forth with FDNY on that. So sounds like that's not going to be communicated to the applicant or to the community board before any of the public hearings held by DOT.
And that's ridiculous,
really important.
because you don't even have any guidance on any parameters of what might remotely be considered as a waiver, and you have to put in all of your fees, spend all the time, retain many professionals. I mean, without, what would be the accommodation where it's not required? And I can think of a few scenarios where it may not be required, but that's not up to us to decide those, but not having.
So, and there don't seem to be clear rules on what would qualify for a waiver, at least.
That's my point, or what would the variables be?
If you had something that said, well, if it's in a case where there's no police station and no bus going by, then you could actually get away with 12 feet or something, which would allow for a waiver. But they don't do that, do they?
No, it's not clear. Just in the legislation, it just.
Oh, set of rules. It's really very wanting. I mean, I'm just talking in frustration.
A lot of it is clear and a lot of it is still open.
And there's a lot of variables just in what could be an exception. Because of access for emergency vehicles depends on the physical conditions moving through. You might reach a building where you might set up fire trucks so that you can access things that it's not a big deal. It is, but there's no guidance. I just feel that it's very unfair to businesses that you taking their application fees without any guidance.
Well, it's very unfair to the community. I mean, Unfair.
Right, so guys, to get us back on track to this one really quickly so we can wrap the bow on it. So we did give the feedback on the emergency lane in our feedback form. And I've also verbally communicated that to DOT as well, and they have again, that's where I learned that they should be flagging it. So on this, as you can, so what I put here on the screen, it was just based on eyeballing it from what Stella had shown us as to what size based on the primary entrance 5-foot clearance on the west, which is in the foreground of the photo. And then based on the 8-foot clearance required for the sidewalk and the swing of that with the tree pit. So that is what space is just as eyeballing it. Again, this is not to scale, but that's about approximately. So it sounds like I think that we should, I think it's pretty clear that this is a denial based on the evidence shown. It sounds like we are, maybe a few of us will go out to go get those exact measurements, so we can put that in our resolution as to what was missing and about the denial for the Sidewalk Cafe. Yes.
One other element of the DOT rules that I think we should flag or make a note of is that elements of the Sidewalk Cafe may cover a cellar or basement door only if the door is not a means of egress, the door is closed and reinforced, and the safety of locating any elements on the door is certified by a registered design professional per the form provided by NYC DOT.
Those are already in the rules. They need a letter that certifies that from an engineer, I believe, right?
Did we see one for this?
So
I don't think it's up to us to review that. It's up to DOT, but it is in the
I can certainly email and ask just to find out what that is.
Well, to Carter's point, it sounds like, yes, it's clearly stated, it's in the rules. It may have been in the rules before for cellar doors and basement doors. But if DOT doesn't flag it, doesn't acknowledge it, and doesn't require it from the proprietor, then it's as good as not there. And so we have to be the ones enforcing it.
Right.
Just like the emergency.
I'm just pulling up now, I'm just pulling up the, is it already on their,
Site plan?
I'm just gonna pull up the full.
Is it on the, is it on the form?
Well, as you're doing that, I just want to ask something about process. So we fill out the form, and then we also do a resolution. So are they submitted together? And
Yeah,
what
so-
base
so-
does our resolution have?
So the resolution is what goes in the form. It's just not in the resolution format.
Oh, it's the same.
Does that make sense?
Same in-
So I did share earlier today with the committee, what that looks like. I can pull one up on.
No,
screen.
I saw it.
Okay.
I was asked.
Yeah.
I thought that there was more in the resolution.
So, well, in the Oscars place, very short. So it all fit in there in the form. On West 10 West, which was just a comment, it's also see attached, and there's a 1-page in the exact same format as the form with the, pedestrian flow, physical footprint, and it's our resolution copied and pasted into there. Just, it gets very illegible. And again, we're moving forward and we don't have any new applications today, we're going to talk through these as we did with the first one, but like filling out writing the resolution as we're talking. So it'll be done ahead of time.
Okay, so what I guess I'm asking is if we have all that information in the required form and then our backup,
If needed, there's
So why are we doing a resolution?
because the resolution is. So the resolution and the form are the same thing,
Right.
just two different formats. So the resolution is what gets voted on at full board of what's going in the form.
So we needed.
So that, yeah, so that's what goes in the full board minutes. So the feedback form. And for instance, Oscar's place, we included the CB2 stipulations. Those don't go to full board. Like that's part of what, it's the material for that. And these packages we send back with our feedback are no more than the one page if it's an approval. If it maybe, let's say on West 10 West, the physical footprint was concise. Our whole resolution was maybe 2 pages, but in order for it to be concise so it can be read by DOT, we put C attached in the form, and it's not sent to them in the resolution form. It's sent and it looks.
Yeah. No, I know, I
Yeah.
understand. I guess I was confused as to why we have a resolution.
The same thing. It's just,
Susanna asked the same question.
Yes.
Full board. And she said, why is this resolution not recognizable to me in your standard form?
Oh, right.
And that was the response, is because we're responding to the.
great question. This is a great question.
View of where getting, there's little dribs and drabs, 1, 2.
Right, where it's not just a drip,
and then
right,
getting- Suddenly
Yes.
we'll have that avalanche.
Right.
and
right.
we have to do that.
Right, so and another question that had come up at full board that I'll bring up here, as we're wrapping this discussion up on this one, is I was asked, can you summarize the roadway cafe resolution, which already was pretty concise? Are we approving this? Are we disapproving it? We're not asked. It's a comment period on roadway. So we've just given our comments. There is a section that says overall recommendation. Our recommendation and our suggested modifications are solution driven. We are trying to find a way to, so that if everything else is met, all the objective, measurements are met, then this is what we need. Again, we have incomplete information on that one. So we don't know if the 15-foot waiver. So again, that was a question asked, and that's when I had sent over to Susanna the next day. Here's the form that we're filling out. So it kind of gives you more sense. If you look at the form for Sidewalk Cafe, there is a box that says community board approves, community board approves with modifications, community board denies. Or at the top, it just says community board waives review. That's it. So because they can't move the Sidewalk Cafe process forward without the decision from the community board. Whereas roadway, it's a comment period. So you can either submit comments or not. They're automatically going to have a public hearing for roadway. And again, that's because of the way the city charter is written. It was too complicated. I can get into that.
We're not.
Yeah, so you want to see that quickly so we can.
I'd ask Stella to put up, so this is what you see on the Zoom screen is what the applicant had provided to us. But what's missing is at the top of the plan, it does not include the distance from neighboring residential entryway. That is a required.
I know,
clearance.
you bet.
On the bottom right corner, it's missing the tree that exists there, and from that corner, there's a required 8 foot. And so with those elements added in, it basically reduces this diagram to nothing, because those 2 omissions basically are critical elements to formulating this diagram. In some respects, I think that's what you should sketch out over this diagram.
Yeah.
It's what's missing as a submission, perhaps, in addition to a photograph.
Maybe Brian wants to.
And we don't have the time to go into detail going forward, but we also don't know how DOT is going to respond to our responses. So trying to make it clear what the problems are, I think is important at the beginning.
Well, and I think
But
one is,
I think we're over discussing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's either, here's the measurement, it doesn't make it next.
right,
I think going forward,
it's
fortunately,
gonna be a lot shorter.
that we can't help explain this to the applicants, we just have to put in what's missing. And then it's up to DOT to decide whether or not they
I'm gonna,
agree with
can I
us.
share my screen so I put those arrow overlays just so, and then we'll wrap.
It reminds me of certain documents where it simply will quote the rules. You know, does not meet this measurement in this section. And that was it. That's it, you know.
Yeah.
So this is probably, and I'm probably being generous on this, right? So with this bottom one, right? It probably should go in a little more.
This one might. Doesn't really make a difference.
So,
Well, the line of their barrier along the tables, that stays at 3.5 feet. So that,
And this is a
anyway, this
dilemma
is really,
that we're gonna find throughout. A lot of our cross streets in the residential districts where we have most of our trees, most of the residential entrances. Narrower lot widths, in some cases, multiple entrances. So these are more likely and narrower sidewalks, and so once you start putting in measurements, it really reduces, and in this particular case, I think this has 2 business store frontages in one building, correct? And
That's
so,
right.
so you really minimize to vary, and the measurement, the critical missing measurements I mentioned before were both from not in front of the storefront. So the tree pit, I don't think crosses
it's,
to this image or maybe just barely, and the doorway above and the top of the diagram.
it doesn't.
Right.
matter that the tree itself is more or less in the center of the lot line, which is between the 2 doors. Or the storefront, I should say, not lot line, but the storefront. So if you went out from that pilaster between the 2 doors out to the tree, it's more or less hitting the tree right in the middle. But yeah, the point is the tree pit. Now we're not measuring to the tree, we're measuring tree pits. But yeah, okay, so
yeah, so this.
first time is always,
So can we vote on this one, that this is a denial based on, it does not meet, that in order for it, the footprint is reduced so much, that we cannot approve it as shown. So,
and we,
because
We're
of,
denying it, not only does it not, is the submission incorrect?
well, it's not that it's incorrect, it's not complete and accurate is the
Okay,
correct.
it's not completely inaccurate,
Yeah.
but even with the elements taken into account, it doesn't leave enough space for reasonable sidewalk cafe.
Well, because we were ready to approve with modifications or even approve if, because of our measurements, that we found that it could work. So we're trying to find a solution here. But upon adding in the primary building entrance, 5 feet on the west, as well as the 8-foot clearance, around the tree pit, reducing that side of the sidewalk cafe, and then the reduction from the primary building entrance, it gets so small that it's, because of what was omitted, in looking to see if it actually was possible, despite the omission of the actual measurements, it does not, there's not able to be a sidewalk cafe there. Okay, so is that everyone, vote?
yes,
Okay. And great. With that, we are gonna move on to our next agenda item, and I know we, again, went on probably just a tad long on that one, but that's all right. We have the time right now, but we certainly will not, in the future. I did learn, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, that CB2 has received 72 outdoor dining applications. We've been referred 3. And we were expecting only to be referred one today, which actually ended up not happening. So we are at it's the inertia that we're waiting on, the agency in this intake period, and our plan reviewer is going back and forth with each applicant, also has multiple community boards, not just ours. I'm not sure what her other community boards are, but she's been very communicative and very thankful. We're all learning in this process together. And I have sent back some feedback on different things, such as, before we get into this, actually is kind of relevant as we move on to our next agenda item. As I mentioned, the DOT public hearing for West 10 West Roadway Cafe is on Thursday, June 20th at 10 a.m. And the only place you can find that information right now is in the classified section of AM New York. So unless you're really hunting for this information, most people are not, and maybe looking at the classifieds. Anyways, I won't go into my editorial on that. And eventually the full agenda for the June 20th DOT public hearing on roadway cafes, and if there's some sidewalk cafes that have been called up, those will also be on their agenda. But they'll publish that full agenda probably next week in City Record. They'll publish the full thing, but they're individual ads for each application in AM New York. You can read the digital edition online. So I've given that feedback to someone just higher up than our DOT plan reviewer, who said that they've heard that feedback, is very kind and gave a lot of information about what happens at that hearing. So they had the first DOT public hearing for roadway cafes last Thursday, 10 a.m. There were 6 applications that were all mostly in Brooklyn, and they were mostly on neighborhood corridor streets. So there were no global or regional corridor applications, probably because those are a little bit more complicated. And so what they'll do is, so I've given that feedback. So DOT is supposedly going to put this on their website, which would make sense, where one could go and look and get notified about how to give feedback, but we will certainly publish any of the CB2 ones as we have space allotted, or we'll put it on our website coming up. So that all kind of leads into this conversation about a resolution that I'd like to send to the exec committee about the Dining Out NYC process. We've been pretty lucky so far in that, for example, in May, we received 3 applications on a Monday. We were able to quickly move and have a hearing, a public hearing for all 3 of the applications 2 days later, thanks to the flexibility of the committee and the office, everyone coming together, and the applicants showed up, but we got lucky. So we need to plan ahead for how we can make sure that the community board has a voice on these applications. So we know a couple things. We know that they get referred to us on Mondays. We know that we have 30 days 30 days to review roadway cafes, which is, again, very short. So for instance, June 20th is the 31st day after it's the morning after the deadline, the 30-day deadline that we had for West 10 West. So there is no wiggle room here, and we could have passed that one at full board and then get our comments in, et cetera, and testify. That's just not possible. So,
but I just want to say though, that when most of these that we should be getting, we should be saying they're fun.
Yeah, we are.
And without any complication.
Right.
I think so.
Well, if they meet the requirements, if they're properly.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, you know, and if people are going to retaining any professionals in this area, in our community, it's certainly, outdoors can be a significant source of revenue for some of the applicants. And, if they take the application process seriously, hire somebody to assist them with that, we're going to get better clear applications is the one that Shirley had presented for the two guys in the fish tank.
Yeah.
Application. I mean, that's, you know, and that's reasonable. You look at it, everything's marked. When that's officially referred to us, I don't think we spend more than a couple minutes.
You still have to look at it, so each one takes a
Right.
moment to look at, it, think, oh, hey.
But even then, I that should all be done before the meeting, I
Yeah.
think, by the committee. And I think any questions should be raised beforehand in, you know, either a Google Docs form so that we can just quickly get through them. Because to your point, if we have 20 applications, you know, in a meeting, we don't have the time to really get into it too much. I think it's better if we referred an application with enough time, if we quickly look through it, if we see anything, is to actually let the applicant know about what we've raised so that they can properly respond before our meeting.
Yep.
Because if we do it we don't have the time to do it afterwards. So in many respects, just looking at it saying, hey, there's a building entrance next door, we don't see it on your plans. Even if you let them know a few days before, we're gonna get a better result in our meeting. Say, you're right, we missed it, or no, it shouldn't count because of whatever, we move on. But that requires some time from us.
I think a lot of us have, I mean, I think, well,
Yeah,
I think a lot of us have got, like, we've all are kind of out and visiting the sites as we can, because again, we have the time right now. We're certainly not going to with all of them, but I think most of them, if they meet and they've been done by an architect, are going to meet. They're not gonna have missing measurements. They're done by a design professional. One thing.
Later.
But you still have to look.
We still look, yeah.
May not take that much time, but you still have to.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So,
and the looking is actually, the problem is you have to really go to the site. Because looking, the assumption is the forms are correct, it's that their emissions is the issue.
Well, exactly, that's why we went out to the site.
well, because even,
And-
right, yeah,
We know the street, we know the neighborhood, maybe it was because of doubts, but you gotta go with a tape measure.
I talked to I saw the manager, we chatted, remembered from the hearing, and just like, great, you know.
But what do you
Wasn't that
do
big
if
of a
it's
deal.
plenty?
Yeah, well, right.
Few of us.
Right, so, anyway, so I'm gonna pull up right now, so because of that, and knowing that, you know, after the July full board meeting, we don't have a full board meeting for 60 days. Because we don't have one in August, so 60 days until the September one, give or take, so, CB7 passed something very similar to this, and not actually very similar, so thank you to Mark Diller for sharing what worked for them. So I kind of took that and tweaked it. And so I'm just going to quickly, whereas this is to be presented to the executive committee to be voted on exactly as a process of the board team. So that's where,
Then to exec to then present to the full board.
Mhm.
So so I have a question. So is that allowed? What they're suggesting? Because they're suggesting that because of the executive committee or the outdoor dining working group, that would be the bona fide comment. Right? That's what
Right.
it's just. Has that been done before? I'm not
Yes.
familiar with it.
It's actually in our bylaws, the executive committee can maintain the position for the board until the full board meets.
I think then that should be in here. That's in our bylaws.
Well, no, that's separate from this. It says the executive committee. The issue is here is if we do not have it, then we will not have a voice.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what the point for here is, not that we don't want the full board to weigh in on this.
Of course.
That in some cases, the
Yeah.
timing is such that we wouldn't have an opportunity. Summers being one, the other is the gap between our last meeting prior to full board and full board in a day or two after.
Yeah.
Anything referred in that window, yeah,
Just asking is, I didn't know. I guess maybe I should look at the bylaws more thoroughly, I really didn't know.
Well, this
Bylaws.
happens every August. You
Oh,
go
sure.
as a member of executive on this every August. When the executive committee meets.
So, okay, I think there's no harm throwing in that little thing, that this is part of our bylaws.
No, but it's not part of the bylaws. This
Our
is
bylaws
separate.
allow for it, right?
No, the bylaws are specific to the executive. The executive committee meets before the full board.
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
the same-
Executive,
That's this committee.
right.
Yeah.
So
The same as this committee.
because this committee is not particularly subjective. It is,
Either a measurement is there, yeah, this is not,
so not, our
Yeah.
comments are not particularly subjective in most cases.
Right.
They're based on something's missing, something's there. You can argue whether or not that's subjective, but the ultimate determiner of this is DOT. They've asked for our comments, we're pointing things out. So it's a fairly straightforward.
Yes, I understand. So why, that should be something there that justifies that we're doing this. And it is because this is a different kind of, situation. Where it is more or less, well, not a rubber stamp, but something like that word. And that maybe we should be having something like that in the warehouses. You see, because I'm reading it, the first thing I said was, is this allowed? I mean, that's great if we can get them to agree, but it's
Yeah.
because it is, as you're saying, it's a very specific kind of unique situation where it's hardly subjective at all. So it should be said, something should be said to that degree.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to go too much into that in the resolution itself. In fact, I think that some of these dates.
Oh, yeah, I mean, some of this, yeah.
Should just be removed. But I think it can be put into context to explain to people, but this resolution is just gonna be there for a long time. And I think if you make it relevant to right now, it sort of misses the point. It's just that this is to when there's not enough time that the committee can meet, always, the board can always.
But isn't it DOT that's gonna make the decision on whether that's gonna be
So to be clear.
incorporated into the press?
So to be clear, DOT does not ask for the full board vote on the form. So there is no communication of the full board vote. I included it. Obviously, we're not sending anything to DOT that does not pass the full board. So there is no full board.
About DPS.
The only, yeah, I included it, it was 36000 for May in the email that the office sends, because our elected officials are copied or BCC'd on that email, and so maybe they want to know that, but it's on the feedback form, there's nowhere that DOT asks for the vote. So the reason why we are asking to do this is because there's going to be a period of time where we are not, even with 2 meetings a month, we will not be able to catch everything in time for full board. So it's,
And
Then, that's right, but if the process is different, which you already have been saying, Carter, but it actually is manifest in the forms. So all we have to do is really say. this is
yeah, so
when-
the form, right, the form does not get filled out without a vote of a body associated with this board. What this resolution is asking for is that when that cannot happen at full board in time. So for example, if we had received, if we weren't able to hold that meeting on the 22nd and we needed to hold it, we need to have the roadway hearing today, we would not be able to submit the comments on West 10 West in time for the public hearing.
What you're saying is that DOT isn't asking full boards
They're,
But the issue is that unless it's said otherwise, no individual committee can speak for the board.
yes,
And no committee, I mean, everybody thinks committees can write letters, they can't.
Yeah.
Only the full board can speak. Is the full
Yeah,
board.
usually.
And then either the executive committee in lieu of the full board and absent to the next full board meeting,
We have to have. some-
or the chair of the board communicating standing position.
right.
So what this does is it creates a situation to say, okay, the full board agrees that the committee communicating, you know, whatever it is that we are communicating on each application is sufficient to stand as the board's input on these matters. And again, it's
So
not
that
particularly
is
subjective.
DOT that. we
This is not going to
This is not
DOT. This is
going
an internal,
for us.
yeah, this doesn't go to DOT.
This is so the full board agrees on what we're doing.
Yeah,
So in other words, it's really not required by the
It's
government.
required by our board.
Ah, okay,
So I'll say that I agree with the resolution. But in my recollection, I've been in many committee meetings where there was not going to be time for resolutions in the committee to be passed by the full board before the event takes place or some other action takes place. And so it's not unusual for that to happen in the whole
But
scheme of
this is
things.
unofficial though.
But that's why I support the resolution.
But that's unofficial, and that's generally happening only at street active. And that's because they're only not required to give us 2 weeks' notice. And again, those are generally bringing up issues, not a position.
to be saying he agrees with
Yeah,
the.
no, but I'm just saying, that's a good example though, where we're bringing up issues. And that's what, because we're not the ultimate decision maker, and it's not even our recommendation that we're telling them. We're telling them this is the issue.
Yeah,
And then DOT or SACO or whomever is taking into account.
We're not the
Because-
final decision makers
Nope.
on anything that comes out of the,
No, but what we're saying here is that the committee can be the decision maker that's shared before the public hearing occurs. That's the.
So that way there
that's
is a
the difference.
we can get in.
so I took out the lines about. So I took out these two, I'm taking out these two and it. Because I'm taking out the lines where it says, whereas this month NYC DOT referred Dining Out NYC application to us on Monday, June 17th, including that's roadway. And that while we are not able, so if we were to, it was basically trying to say, if we were referred a roadway application next Monday, that we're not able to hold a public hearing because of Juneteenth as a federal holiday and a city holiday and a state holiday on
All of
Wednesday.
it.
But yeah, so that should go, it's way too specific to this time period. So I've taken that out. So I've got, whereas the community board and the community representatives should have an opportunity to review and comment on roadway and sidewalk cafes in the Dining Out NYC program. Whereas the time frame for reviewing Dining Out NYC applications is 30 days for roadway cafes and 40 days for sidewalk as mandated by the NYC DOT rules for the program. Whereas NYC DOT refers Dining Out NYC applications to community boards on Mondays only, there are only 2 opportunities a month for applications to be referred to the board in time for the outdoor dining working group to hold a public hearing and produce a resolution for that month's full board meeting.
Can we actually change that and say that they only refer applications to community boards once a week? We don't, again, need to be specific on the day, that could change.
Okay, once a week.
I mean,
You're right, it is once a week technically. Whereas 30 days, sometimes 40 days is not enough time to bring a resolution to the full board, whereas DOT automatically schedules all Dining Out NYC roadway applications on the day after the 30-day community board comment period for roadway cafe applications, leaving no flexibility to submit comment before the DOT public hearing on the roadway cafe application after the community board commented. It's really long. Therefore, be it resolved that the outdoor dining working group resolutions with respect to a Dining Out NYC application will be considered the decision of Manhattan CB2 if the DOT mandated application deadline falls before the next full board meeting, and as such will be transmitted to the appropriate agencies as committee actions.
Considered the recommendation.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is there a reason why this is going to the executive committee as opposed to the full board?
Arturo, 1 second, our chair has their hand up first. If you could raise your hands and then I'll call on people from the board. Thanks.
Thanks, Valerie. You know, when we talked about this earlier, I mentioned something, a possibility of including something about an enhanced notice provision so that board members are made aware that that there are applications that will not make it to the board and that this is going to be their one chance. So if there's something included like an extra, the office would send out a notice of some sort saying that we want people to be aware that we are in this position and that this will be triggered so that if there's any concerns, they're going to have, this is going to be your one chance to bring them up.
Well, shouldn't that always be the assumption? Because the committee is where people should be raising the issues.
Of
Because
course.
these are technical issues that really are not. I mean, again, these are not subjective. These are measurement issues. You know, and unless somebody's saying, I read the resolution, I went to the site and I measured this and I got a different measurement. The majority of, you know, people still feel that this is, that we're saying, yes, they can be there or no, they can't, because we like them or we don't, which is not the case. This is fairly straightforward.
I appreciate that. I was just thinking that board members might appreciate being reminded that this is something we have not done before. And that just to let them know that we have got applications that are falling into this unusual situation.
Yeah, but just for clarity, we do it every August.
Yes, and they're aware of it, but we haven't had, this is a repeating situation that could happen at other times of the year.
Right, but the point is that, and this is what Arturo is getting to, is that the committee is recommending this resolution to the executive committee, and then the executive committee who can discuss it, because it's the executive committee that this type of, you know, acts in this type of situation. Then the executive committee is referring this resolution to the full board. The full board will vote on it. Therefore, all the full board members will be aware that this is happening.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Carter's talking about this resolution, as in this resolution you see on the screen. We are proposing to send this to the executive committee, who will then vote on it. Then this resolution will be voted on at the June full board meeting.
Oh, I wasn't referring to this specific resolution. I'm just saying that in the future, when you have other applications coming and because of the timing will trigger this situation, that in those situations, an added notice will go out to say that, by the way, this will not be voted on at full board.
And so is that burden on the district manager? I mean, because you're putting burdens out here on notice.
I would,
Stuff that just.
Susan, I was answering kind of Arturo's question before I call on him. And I said, we'll call on you in a second, Arturo. But I would say, we don't have any of the agenda items on for the last week of this, you know, month. So there's a lot that's like not being, and that's on, you know, the chairs and all that of communicating to the office. So I just, there's a lot of other things that kind of need to be fixed before kind of sending out extra emails on this.
Okay.
I think this resolution that's being proposed will be proposed to the executive committee. Then this resolution will be proposed to the full board, or the full board members will be able to debate it and talk about it. And then it's the onus is always on the board members to to inform themselves of, you know, it's very clear if something's being held on a certain day, and maybe we put the deadline date, so it's clear maybe on the agenda, it's on the application when they're due. And so if someone's genuinely interested, they will know whether or not something's gonna be at full board, just based on the application. It says when it's due back to DOT.
Okay, okay.
Arturo?
Or Mark,
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, hold on. Yes.
Would it,
Sorry.
would it address both points if every time, because I'm trying to find a simple and repeating process. So one solution that may address what I understood Susan to be talking about would be that every time we get an application, we circulate it or put it in a drive and circulate the link to the full board, not
Yeah.
just to the committee.
No,
And
no,
that way,
no. I think we solved it. Yeah.
okay.
That is an idea, but I think that's, I don't think,
However-
yeah, that's a good idea to bring up, but I don't think that's, thank you for clarifying that. Yes, and I think that like sending an extra notice that something will not be held at full board, it also could be
Put it
held
out.
back. It could be held back the way this one was, and then it could be held at the next full board, so then that just kind of gets a little, you know, if there's information missing, et cetera. Arturo, the floor is yours. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. So yes, thank you for the clarity on how this resolution will move from this committee to executive committee to the full board. Appreciate
Yes.
that clarity. I think to Susan's point, even if we could include a time window of like, this is the period when if applications arrive, there will be this committee meeting when they will be reviewed. I think that would be helpful for the full board membership to know. I guess that's the only recommendation I'd have, just to increase transparency and participation from the full board, since it really does require understanding what time period those applications will be moving to this working group, and when they should attend to be able to review them if they choose to do so.
I don't understand your question, because every application we get is 30 days or 40 days. And we put it on the next
So
agenda.
it wasn't a question, it was a request.
Claire, if you could, let me clarify this. So as soon as we receive applications, they get put on our calendar. And then every Friday, it'll then be, everyone gets the notifications at the same time. We have all of the outdoor dining working group meetings, I think through August, are listed on the calendars already. So those dates have been set. We are going to be potentially adjusting those this month, but they're set for right now. So, excuse me, July 8th, August 12th. I've got those. We're probably going to add one or move those, maybe do a Wednesday. But so those dates are set. Every application that's linked on our website has the due date of when it's due.
All right, so is it safe to assume then that the Monday, August 12th meeting is the meeting that full board members would want to attend if they want to make remarks for dining out, outdoor dining work group applications?
Yes.
Okay.
So just for clarification, and this is what I think, there's no variability in the time. When the notice is received by the board, it's 30 days for roadbed dining. We have to respond within 30 days, not 31 days, 30 days. And it's the same 40 days for sidewalk dining. And so the calendared meeting, everything that has been received by the board that hasn't been reviewed by the committee is going to be placed on that next calendar. There's still an open question about what is received on the Monday, if the meeting is on Monday, if that will actually be heard that same night. The meeting has been noticed, but we kind of end up in a little bit of a jam then, but we still only have 30 days. It doesn't change. There's not an opportunity to ask for more days. And that's what makes this complicated and why this resolution is necessary. And we have advocated for this not to be the case beforehand for exactly the reasons that you are raising to New York City council members, to our council members, to the DOT, to the mayor, and
To the person
anybody who was listening.
who wrote the legislation directly.
Correct. And they felt that, you know, that wasn't significant to them, so they've put us in the situation, not ourselves. And this is the complication with any notice requirements to community boards, is that community boards, all 59 of them meet on a monthly basis, on a monthly schedules. And most community boards do not have meetings in July and August. Our board happens to, given the volume of the work. We also have a full board meeting in July, which we're not required to do. And our executive committee still meets in August in order to still preserve our voice on issues as they might come up. So the burden is not that the board has created the situation. It's the city has created the situation in this case in the legislation that they've passed.
Definitely. No, I just think having a little bit more clarity about like dates and timelines so that, you know, especially me as a new board member, I'm not as familiar with how all these processes work, could easily overlook the fact that we expect, you know, a very big influx of applications. Who knows, maybe that doesn't materialize, but presumably they will start coming in because the deadline is coming up. And so it would be good to know and be informed of the dates where these, if this resolution passes, when this committee will be taking action that will then reflect the voice of the full board, right? If this resolution passes. So I think having that clarity for the full board would be really beneficial to people know, to let people know how they can get involved when the full board isn't meeting in August.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm gonna repeat again, and I'm gonna say, and I know Susan has repeated this as well, is that the place to discuss these issues is at the committee meeting. And,
Right, so he's just
and
asking for more transparency as to when the specific applications that won't go to full board are going to be here, so.
and full board, we don't have the diagrams, materials, we don't have the discussion points, it's not put out, et cetera.
So, an example, this could happen, this could be relevant next Monday already, because if we receive a roadway application next Monday, 30 days from next Monday is July 17th, which is 2 days before the July full board meeting. So again, it runs into that same, we're at that part of the month now with the roadway cafe. It's really the sidewalk, I think it just barely makes it. But the roadway cafes, once we get into the later half of the month, it becomes really tight. Especially this kind of third week. So Arturo, do you have any other comments? Okay, thank you.
No.
Are there any other board members on that have comments about this? And then I'll ask if the public has anything. So now I don't see any other board member hands raised. So if anyone from the public would like to speak regarding this resolution. Okay. Please raise your hand on Zoom. We have one person here from the public in the room who has not raised their hands. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop the share. So besides from taking out set, so we'll get circulated and posted. Then the last part of our agenda is preliminary discussion of any dining out. So we did not receive any, right, Mark? We didn't receive any. Okay, thank you. So so as I mentioned, these are referred on Mondays. And the resolution that we had before, we just put it as once a week because that Monday date could change. So, but as of right now, they are referring Dining Out NYC applications borough, I think it's just so they can keep track of all of them across all of the 59 community boards, get referred on Mondays. If an application is not ready on a Monday, then it gets held into the next week. So again, here we are Monday, 8:01. We've not received anything, so we do not anticipate receiving anything this week, so possibly next week. I had put on here, on the information I shared with the committee, that we did receive, and I sent, we unofficially have, because of what has been submitted to our SLA committee, we do have the updated sidewalk diagrams for Chechi's, which is Two Guys in a Fish Tank, which has not been officially referred to us from DOT, but it's the one that, that I was told by the plan reviewer that we could have expected to have received that one today. So we did not, so I did not put it formally on the agenda, but I put a new business to discuss. So if there are any comments or questions on that, this is not the formal public hearing for Two Guys in a Fish Tank DBA Chechi. So this is just a preliminary. And what we're gonna do is, like, since we do have the unofficial, since it's not been officially referred, we don't have any sort of time period. This is a sidewalk cafe, so normally we would have 40 days. But since we do have information, the committee will put together a list of any errors or omissions or questions that we have for the applicant, so that when it does get referred, we'll have those ready to go, so that they have the maximum amount of time to seek out the information that we were wanting clarification on. And then they will get the formal invite to attend the public hearing our public hearing, the CB2 public hearing on their application, which they are not required to attend. There's nothing in the legislation that says that an applicant has to attend the community board public hearing or appear before the community board. However, for a sidewalk cafe, I think it is in the best interest, since the community board decision does play a role in whether or not a DOT public hearing is required. So, yeah, yes.
Yeah, well, if we're talking Chechi's.
Yeah.
And nobody else wants to. It is the plan for Chechi's that has led me to ask for the new business item on grading, because there is grading in the Chechi plan.
Okay.
So I don't know which way to go, whether to give background of two other situations with grading, which I think we've discussed before.
Yeah.
And I see it again here. I think you have the answer. Anyhow, let me just give you the background.
Sure.
I have my own personal experience on a rainy day of walking on 7th Avenue South and West 9th Street. The building was 99 7th Avenue South. The restaurant was Boucherie. And there's subway grading in front, and the cafe came out almost like within about an inch to the subway grading. So to me, that seemed to be totally against requirements, because that would force you to walk on the subway grading. And you can slip. By the way, it was a rainy day, and I almost did slip on the subway grading. So you told me to send that to 311. I did. And then a few days later, maybe a week later, the latest, I got an answer saying case closed, which was right when I questioned that again. I never heard anything else. But then about a week later, a constituent had the same problem with the duplex, also on 7th Avenue South at 61 Christopher. It's really just across the street from Boucherie, pretty near, and they had the same identical thing. The grading, which took up the total sidewalk space and passage. Okay. Then I took a look at Chechi's plan, which I think is very professionally done. And they have grading also with maybe 1.5 feet of space between the end of the cafe and grading. And the grading then with that 1.5 feet, it's a little over 8 feet. So in other words, they're giving the 8 foot clearance, and I can pass it around if you guys want to take a look.
I see it's 4 feet 9 inches.
Yeah.
From
So,
the edge of the grade.
well, yeah, okay. So I guess I always thought you had to have 8 foot clearance of actual sidewalk, concrete.
And then
But Valerie, you looked up the ruling and it wasn't like that, and I'm quite surprised. That's it. So what was the ruling again?
About 6 inches,
cafe siding plan.
but I see.
Yeah, not the 6 inches, in other words, just a little tiny sliver of sidewalk to walk on. So is the grading counted as the 8 foot clearance? Because it's my question. And I never thought that was the case.
I was gonna say, the condition that you were talking about during the temporary program exists almost all the way down Seventh Avenue.
Yeah,
South.
okay, right.
It
But
is
you-
not
it's not-
limited to those two situations, but in this
but it's
plan,
not-
you have significant clearances here. From the grading, because I recall my dog used to not.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, I thought that this was.
Grading, so I was very familiar with that.
A lot of dogs. So, yeah, when this was presented at SLA, I resolved to clarify in my own mind just
Okay.
what was required. So
Yeah.
the part of the rules that refer to this
Yeah.
subway grade, so you cannot have any of the sidewalk cafe grades. And you must keep 1 foot 6 inch clear from the vent structure. That's
And
what the
that's
grades
it.
are called.
That's it.
Right. So
So here,
the grades have to be clear. And the sidewalk cafe can't be any closer than 1 foot 6 inches to the grade.
so that's what, this is from the,
So 2 feet. But what I'm saying, that means that the pedestrian is asked to walk on the grading, that is their clearance for walking.
those are the rules that have been passed.
Huh?
Those are the rules that have been passed.
Yes. that is correct.
So that's why they closed the face of the rule. They're insane rules. I'm telling you, in the rain, you really could slip.
I'm not disagreeing with you or not. This is has the requirement here, whereas utility clearances, it says the setup must maintain 1 foot 6 inches from the vent of the structure, including but not limited to the objects below and at grade, installation grade, subway grades, vent holes.
Yeah, there you go. There you have it. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a picture.
That's part of
It's so
the-
little space for the pedestrian. I somehow felt in the old days that you had to have the sidewalk clearance,
Hmm.
the 8
It's-
feet, and that the grading was extra.
No, it's,
But
yeah, that definitely wasn't the case because none of, like, for example, Boucherie had a sidewalk cafe before COVID.
Sure.
And if that had been the case, that would have eliminated it to almost nothing. And that was the garage before that,
Well, it could have been narrow,
So-
right? A couple of rows.
right?
This is that, yeah, that's.
So,
It could have been narrow. I don't know.
There-
if it was or not. Point is that
No, no, no.
the rule?
No, it only has.
I-
There are only a few subway grades in the city
Uh,
that are raised up on a curb. Or have other kinds of obstacles mounted on top of the grade. So that, yeah, because that's not a continuous surface with the sidewalk.
But it's really dangerous. And-
so we're talking about this in the context of this application for Chi-Chi's. Chi-Chi's was in an area that previously you could not have a sidewalk cafe. Because it was a residential zone street. So,
Okay,
so we don't
Wasn't by
have
measurement.
previous sidewalk cafe plans. I have the sidewalk cafe plans for 99 7th Avenue South. And in that particular case, they maintained a 4 foot 7 inch clearance between the subway grade and the sidewalk dining area. And I am going to, well, no, I was going to explain that I believe that Boucherie and Mr. Sefcoff, the owner, this has been the case on several of his establishments. The previous rules were that I believe it was 50% of the sidewalk was the maximum. And I believe that they have taken
Depending on the
that,
size of the site.
right, but in temporary program, that was not the case. All you had to leave was 8 feet. And so the sidewalk cafe at Boucherie is significantly bigger under the temporary program than it was during the previous DCA period or this new period. Because the condition now is just 8 feet, not 50% of the sidewalk.
Right, and 50.
So that's,
according to the size of the width of the sidewalk. In other words, a large sidewalk.
so that sidewalk was 20 feet.
Yeah, so that.
And so the
If you had-
maximum size of the sidewalk was 10. But what Mr. Sefcoff did was he was able to extend it 2 additional feet, make the sidewalk cafe 2 additional feet wider. Because the temporary rules only required an.
Yeah, I get that, but in any case, the grading applies as clearance. What I'm saying. Which is really
Yes, that's correct. And you can see the same
offensive.
frustration for the clearance requirement. If you go to the beginning of Greenwich Avenue between 6th and Christopher. On the south side is one of Mr. Sefcoff's other establishments, which is fully built out with 8 feet, huge sidewalk.
Okay,
All right, well, at least I clarified in my mind.
yeah,
I mean, we could do a whole campaign to
I know,
just get that.
I know.
rendered.
So,
I never knew that.
did not, so I guess I will revise the resolution for West 10 West, the Sidewalk Cafe, based on our vote here this evening. And I will put together our minutes and the report of this meeting and send it around for you guys to look at, for the committee to look at, and then it will be and the resolution and the updated, it'll be all in the report, the second resolution on the process. And then we will bring that to the full board on the 8th. The date. Is there any other new business?
Question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I'm sorry. I had a question about Chechi's because, I mean, that happens to be my building. And I wanted to know what program is there outdoor dining currently operating under? Because those tables and chairs just showed up one day.
I'm not clear. Did they just open or?
They are a relatively new restaurant. They are post-COVID.
So did they open after August 3rd, 2023?
Yeah, oh gosh, it's just about a year. That's why.
So if it's about a year and we're June, then they could have put in an application for I haven't, again, since this hasn't been officially referred, I can go look and see if they've been certified in the temporary program. But I will say that there are between August 3rd, 2023, when the DOT officially closed the self-certified temporary program for any new applications. That does not mean that there are not other operators putting out tables and chairs that perhaps necessarily don't have a liquor license maybe. So they're not having to come before SLA, who would ask and have them take a position on that. So it's quite possible that there are several operators that have opened between even that have come to SLA because this gray area time. So either if there's no operator or no dining establishment or eating and drinking establishment in CB2 that is operating under the permanent program.
Right.
At this time. Everything is either self-certified from the temporary program, or if they opened after August 3rd, 2023, they're out in the wild. They still can be cited for not being certified. I don't know if DOT is enforcing that particular corrective action, but they can also be cited for other violations, other corrective actions if they are, because they're whether or not they're certified, they could receive a violation in the temporary program if DOT chooses to enforce that.
Seems to me that I had the impression that this existing establishments had a grace period till the end of this season to apply for the new permanent rules, take down their old, sheds and all the rest of that. So there's going to be a lot of stuff around for the rest of the season.
Yes, so by August, so I don't know if that answers your question, Susan. So it's quite possible that it can, whether or not someone's certified doesn't preclude, and the temporary program doesn't preclude them from having tables and chairs if DOT is not enforcing someone not having the temporary program self-certification. So. And then, Arturo.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just had a few comments, I think also motivated by this conversation. And Shirley, thank you for bringing up the subway grading. It sounds like a few people in the comments from the community also had some concerns about subway grading and the clearance. I think it would be, I would hope the working group could consider maybe having that conversation, whether or not that's worth the resolution to give feedback to the city on that. Along the same lines, scaffolding, I haven't really seen any remarks on what the clearances look like for scaffolding. I was just looking at some old Google Maps photos and for Chechi's, and it seems like it used to have scaffolding, which would be a pretty big obstruction in the middle of some of that clearance.
It's
And then
clear
the
now.
Oh, it's clear now, yeah. But like there's so much scaffolding all over the street that it just would be good to have some clarity on how that either is being considered or not being considered by the DOT rules. And then the last thing is that I think for this specific application, the clearance is supposed to be closer to 10 feet, right? Because I think the clear path has to be 50%.
No, so it's 8 feet for, this is a neighborhood corridor street.
Yeah, you're saying it's 50. You could be correct, Arturo. Different.
The greater one though. Yeah, the rules say that it has to be the greater 50% or 8 feet on the neighborhood path.
So if that still holds for the current rules.
So
So I think it would be good to get a design that incorporates that minimum clearance path.
So the presented width for Chi-Chi's is 9 feet. The distance between the edge of the Sidewalk Cafe at Chi-Chi's and the subway grate is 4 feet 9 inches. And then the distance, it doesn't say, but it looks like it is well over 10 feet. I'm assuming that the plans are to scale.
With the grading.
Yeah, with the grading.
That would be another one that we could go by, check the missing dimension.
So it's 8. 8 plus 5 is 13 plus 7. So it's a 20-foot side, it's a 20-foot wide sidewalk. And the width of the Sidewalk Cafe is 9 feet.
Well, but the thing is, when you look on the left side, the subway grate goes up. So
Yeah,
that,
but if you look on the right side, you have the dimension of MTA emergency hatch.
oh yeah, I see it.
So it's
Okay.
8 feet, 1.5
Yeah.
inches. You have a dimension of 5 feet and then 7 feet and 20 feet.
That's like
Probably
21 and a
about
half, 21 and a half feet. Okay,
But I would say, if you look at Canning Board 2's outdoor dining page on the website, you will see that the community board advocated at length for many, many, many
for
different
the
issues
greens.
with very, very little response. And the scaffolding is a temporary condition. not a permanent condition. And as a result, the temporary condition would be handled by different rules, not something that we would take into account for a permanent application. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe in the past, you could not have a sidewalk cafe underneath scaffolding. It had to be removed, is my memory, because I seem to remember we had some issues
Had that,
with
yeah.
them in the past. But that was waived during the temporary program for whatever reason, but it's.
Okay, just like a quick follow-up, and thank you for the context. Do you know if those rules will be updated again anytime soon? Is there any kind of like appetite for that, or are we just kind of going with the set of rules that we have for now until?
So again, I can answer that. So the rules as they stand were reviewed citywide in November. And then the amended rules came out in response to that and to that DOT public hearing. We've weighed in before the rules were written. We weighed in all along the way. And our history of that is, if you scroll further down, I've kept a lot of the historical information on the dining or on the CB2 outdoor dining working page to show that response. So we've been responding to this since 2020 about specific rules for roadway and for dining, both during the zoning text amendment hearing, during the conclusion of that legislation being heard, and where we were able to advocate our position to the bill writer for the legislation in the third iteration of it. And a lot of what you're asking for, we've tried to advocate for that based on our past board positions in the legislation, as well as in the rules period, and had multiple community boards sign on with us with a united front with a lot of statistics on all of these specific things. So I think it's great to ask. And but as far as this program is still rolling out, it hasn't even been implemented with the first restaurant. So at this time in the permanent program, so we're going to get hey, we're trying to roll this out. See you in a year, so, or see you in 4 years, because this is a 4-year license. And so there's really no appetite from the administration, certainly, let alone from the agency to amend any sort of rules. They're trying to tread above water to implement the existing rules as passed.
Thanks, Valerie. Appreciate it.
And I would just add on, not a single license has been issued yet.
Just one more question. I don't even know if this is relevant, but next to Chechi's is a garage. And is there any rules regarding distance from an active garage?
Be a driveway.
Driveway, yes, and it's very wide. There's the entrance to the garage, but because of the way the curb cuts work, they use the space next to that actual entrance also for cars. They move them around. I don't know if there's any rules regarding that. It's just an open question to me.
I also refer everyone to the Dining Out NYC page, where it lists visually what the rules are, as well as the actual text. But it would be treated as a driveway.
Okay.
10 feet from the nearest flush portion of the curb cut or driveway.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So
You can search on the upper right side. There's a Google search, and you can put in the terms and it will.
And Pete, thank you for mentioning curb cuts are mentioned. I don't have all of the rules memorized. I have it accessible on my Acrobat and I search, but I have looked at them a lot. I've compared the amended rules to the original rules and compared all the different iterations of the legislation. I by no means am an expert or know everything. I'm continuing to learn, and I refer back to them all of the time. The diagrams that DOT presents are on their on the Dining Out NYC website are also very helpful. But just to kind of wrap this up, based on the DOT public hearing, only 16 roadway cafe applications were referred to community boards in the month of May. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what the volume citywide is. And and as I mentioned, we've been told we have 72 that have been 72 different applications, roadway, sidewalk that are in CB2. We've only been referred 3 of those. So again, I'm telling you, kind of just based on the public hearings by DOT that you have to search AM New York to find, or you find the full city record that has the list for the day. The June 20th DOT public hearing for roadway, that is only the second public hearing they will have held since applications for this program were heard since applications have been accepted on March 5th. So again, that's just, there were 6 last week that were heard, and there are 10 on the agenda for this hearing on June 20th, which includes one of our roadway cafe applications. So with that, if there's no other comment, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Great, Shirley and Brian. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, we're out.
Okay.
Yeah.